Hello, Namaskar. Welcome to my pod, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis, and my name is Juggi Bhasin. So, when I look at Bangladesh today, what do I see? I see theory becoming practice. When I look at Bangladesh today, what do I see? I see a conspiracy theory actually becoming a reality. When I look at Bangladesh today, what do I see? I see the deep state assuming power and the face of that deep state coming to power in Bangladesh. That is what I see. And if you think I'm talking in riddles, then make it very simple for you. I will explain to you what I am talking about. But before I do that, I would urge all of you to, of course, subscribe to my channel, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis. And the thing which I promise in my show is that my ideas are always different. The podcast is always very entertaining with very different set of ideas. So go for it. Subscribe to my channel. And of course, please like my show also. That's very encouraging. So let's dive right back into the topic of the day of the podcast. And today I'm going to talk about not only the present situation in Bangladesh, but I'm going to talk about this plan to balkanize. Oh no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't use the word balkanize. I should rather use the word Banglasize India. That is the plan. It has been so successfully carried out by vested interests in Bangladesh. And of course, the next stop is definitely India. I'm going to talk about that plan also today. But before I do that, let's take a quick look at the situation in Bangladesh today. What strikes me when I look at Bangladesh today, and actually when I look at take an overview of things around the world, the sheer hypocrisy of the Western world. The Western world actually is almost behaving like a schizophrenic person. A person with a split personality. When I see podcasts, when I see the media coverage, when I see the pronouncements of important people in the Western world, then I can see that everyone is hailing the arrival of Muhammad Yunus as the interim head of government in Bangladesh. But no one is talking about the killings which are going on in Bangladesh, the killings of minorities, the lynchings, the lynch mobs which are targeting the minorities, burning their houses, raping the women out there. Nobody's talking about that. The advent of the Islamists, of the radical, of the Jamaat, nobody is talking about that. But everyone is hailing the arrival of the the so-called interim head of Bangladesh, Muhammad Yunus, this Nobel laureate who is now supposed to be the savior or kind of a messiah according to the Western world, who has taken over power in Bangladesh. And when I look at Bangladesh, what else do I see? I see a comparison, a stunning comparison, which has, I think, escaped many people. This movement, by and large, was, of course, led by students of the radical kind. And when I see this takeover, it reminds me of the takeover which happened in Iran so many decades back, when the Shah of Iran was overthrown and radicalized, Islamicized students took over Iran. The same thing is happening out there. And if anyone tells me that the students in Bangladesh are these peaceniks or these peace-loving people who just wanted to overthrow the government and bring in a democratically elected people, then I'm sorry, stop fooling yourself and stop fooling us. That's not the case. These are radicals who have overthrown a government, obviously on the behest of foreign powers, on the behest of foreign intelligence agencies, certainly the ISI. There are reports also that the CIA could also be involved. I have no way to verify that. But the ISI definitely, the Jamaat is definitely involved. That is the similarity which I see. And maybe Muhammad Yunus might be the head, but maybe he is what is called a puppet head. The real power is going to be wielded by these radicalized students. Tough days ahead for Bangladesh. Certainly, we need to be very, very cautious. We need to be very, very careful, because the same game plan which has unfolded in Bangladesh, the same Banglasize plan is there ready-made for India, and I'm going to talk about that soon. Now, before I do that, let's try and understand that there is a certain method in the madness. What do I mean by that? On the face of it, of course, there is anarchy, chaos, violence, killings, all that is going on in Bangladesh. But there is a method to this madness. The method is that you bring about a regime change. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, about this regime change. Whether we like it or not, Sheikh Hasina was a democratically elected head of government. The BNP did not take part in the elections, we know about that, but not because Sheikh Hasina stopped them, because they did not to take part because of a script which had already been written for the BNP by foreign powers. She was elected fair and square. There were hundreds and millions or thousands of millions of Awami League people who voted her into power. Now what happens to that? Suddenly in a day, nobody is talking of the Awami League. Nobody is talking to her millions of supporters who are all over the country. Nobody is talking about the 9 to 10% of the Hindus which are there in Bangladesh, as if these people, the Awami League and the Hindus and the Christians in Bangladesh, have disappeared from the face of the earth, and only that remains are these glorious students who have brought about the so-called wonderful revolution and their titular head, Muhammad Yunus. That is what people are only interested in. So that is something we need to keep into mind. Why is the Western world, which at the drop of the hat keeps talking about democracy, the rule of democracy, democratic values, is completely silent on the upstaging of a democratic election in Bangladesh? The installation of Muhammad, where did Muhammad Yunus come from? Who is he after all? How should he be taking over this entire country? Who has asked him to do that? That is the question which needs to be asked. And why is the Western world silent on Hindu lynchings and killings? Is the Western world only concerned about being Islamophobic? Nobody is concerned about being Hindu-phobic? Now these are the questions which are coming to the fore. This is the hypocrisy which is coming to the fore, and this needs to be addressed soon. I've given you the overview. Now let's talk of this game plan, this Banglasizing, downsizing, balkanization plan of certain hostile intelligence agencies, foreign powers, which they have rolled out in Bangladesh, and something similar could be in the offing for India. It has been tried before in India, and I will explain to you this step by step. The first step to destabilize and overthrow a government according to this plan is that you go through the route of the students. In the earlier days, in the 60s and the 70s, they used to go through, the students are involved even then, but at that time it used to be through the route of the trade unions. You know, the trade unions used to create this industrial unrest in a country, and that used to impact the economy, and therefore destabilization used to set in. Today, the route is a little different. Today, because economy is by and large a more developed, more mature, or a little better, of course, than those times. So what happens is you go through the route of the student. Now, who is a student in any country? Forget about Bangladesh. Whether in India or in Britain or in any other country in the world, a student is always, and I remember my student days, all students are rebels without a cause. They might be having a cause also. Today, of course, the causes are environmental concern, equality, race equality. All those things are there, absolutely. But by and large, a student is a rebel without cause, and therefore, it is not so difficult to actually agitate a student. It could be as simple, the issue could be as simple or as trivial as the fact that you are not getting good hostel food, or the fact is that some allowances or some benefits which a student gets has been cut, and agitation can start. We have seen all those agitations breaking out in JNU, in Jamia Millia, and all these other universities. Any issue is good enough. Then what happens is that once the student is agitated, then the linkages to other student bodies, other student groups across the country, across different states, across state lines, that is very, very quick. And how does that happen? And there's step number 2. You use social media. You use WhatsApp. to mobilize the same students. And suddenly what happens is within a day, because please remember the other striking feature of the Bangladesh insurrection, I would call it, is that all this literally happened within almost 24 to 48 hours and Sheikh Hasina was overthrown. Okay, it happens very, very quickly. And that happens because of the mobilization on WhatsApp. Student groups come out on the streets, they start agitating. Many are agitating without even knowing what they are agitating for, but they all come out on the streets. And when masses of people are out on the streets, violence is inevitable in some form or the other. Arson is inevitable. Danger to life, limb and property is inevitable. And then a victim game starts from that entire process. Somebody could be injured, somebody could be killed, something could be burned, things could be looted, all. And then suddenly this entire list of victims emerge. These faces of victims emerge. They become heroes overnight. And then the media roots for them, and the victim blame game starts, that the powers to be are responsible for suppressing people, for inflicting all this harm on people. So that's how the modus operandi is. You go through the WhatsApp route, mobilize people, and then the victim card is played. And then the third step, then you deploy selected social media influencers. And a lot of these social media influencers are these good looking, energetic, very well communicating influencers who start doing the job for these intelligence agencies, for these Western interests. They go hammer and tongs at the establishment. They start then painting real or fake or imagined narratives, and those narratives strike home. People start believing a fake scenario or a narrative, and these social media powerful influencers play a very, very critical and a key role in that. Then the next step after that, of course, is that once it is proceeding on those lines, then you start paralyzing the civic administration. Remember what happened when the Kisan agitation had been rolled out in India? All the roads coming in from Punjab and Haryana had been completely blocked by the agitators. Our economy actually suffered a huge setback because of that. Thousands of crores were lost because of that. So you paralyze the civic administration, nothing moves, you occupy the streets. This occupy culture then comes into being. That's the next step of this. You want to call it toolkit, you want to call it balkanization, you want to call it, as I'm calling it now, Banglasization, which is going on. And then, very, very interestingly, you bring the entire intelligentsia on your side. Who are the intelligentsia? The intelligentsia, of course, they are the professors and the academics in universities. They are the media, of course. These are the intelligentsia who play a stellar role, I would say a significant role in this entire insurrection. If I were to say that today, for instance, in the United States, that the root cause of this free Palestine movement are not even the students, but the professors in all these Ivy League colleges, then I would be absolutely correct. I would not be wrong, because these academics, these professors have played a pivotal role in bringing this entire woke left liberal culture, left liberal woke movement in not only universities but literally now on the streets. We can see that happening in London also. Today now the anti so-called right protests are happening, and again these are being led by the same set of people. So all I'm saying is that you bring in the intelligentsia, lock, stock and barrel, they all join in the cause, and then people think that this is a righteous cause, this is a cause which is intellectually correct, morally correct, socially correct, and that's the final thing which they do, that you give this social acceptance to the entire agitation, that this is a just cause, this is a moral cause, You are answering to your conscience by doing this. For instance, see the case of Hogarth, which has unfolded in front of us. She no longer today, is like a wrestling icon. But for a lot of these people, she has become an opposition candidate. You transform, you completely, as I say, mutate an issue. It takes a life form, a different life form, a very insidious life form of its own. That is what happens in this toolkit. That is what happens in this modus operandi, which is unfolded right before our eyes. And then look at the role of the media in that. And the role of the media is very, very significant. I was watching the news yesterday, and I was watching the BBC bulletin, the 9:30 prime bulletin for us. And this lady anchor, who, by the way, is based out of Delhi, she was giving this long report on Bangladesh. And you could see the smile on her face, this look of joyousness that Muhammad Yunus has taken over. She was waxing eloquent. The students are so peacefully guiding the traffic. You can see the transformation. That not a word did she say about the lynchings, the killings which are going on in Bangladesh. Not a word about the attacks on the Hindus. Not a word. And that was not only the BBC, by the way. That was, I checked, France 24 in late evening. Not a word out there. And then the shocker, this headline in the New York Times, and they mentioned that Hindus are being killed in revenge killings. What do you mean by revenge killings? That the Hindus did something wrong. For instance, voting for the Awami League or for Sheikh Hasina, and therefore now there is righteous or just revenge, that they should be lynched on the streets because of that. This is what the New York Times and the democratic Western world has come down to. It is shocking what is really going on. So you deploy the media in this particular manner in the cause of your insurrection. And therefore, what happens after this is that once all these factors are in place, then the whole issue starts snowballing. It starts growing bigger and bigger till the point nobody even remembers the point or the issue from where they had started from. Classic case, Bangladesh. Today nobody is talking of the quotas from which supposedly the agitation had started. Nobody is bothered with that because the purpose of starting the agitation was completely different. And same case, nobody remembers the point. If you remember again the CAA agitation which happened on our streets, the whole point being that Muslims should not be forced out of India even if they are legal under the NRC. Till the government was pointing out that we have no plans to bring the NRC. But who was bothered with that? Nobody was bothered with that. A false narrative then becomes and assumes a life form of its own. It mutates into a different entity. It mutates into a different kind of a reality. And that is what we are seeing in country after country. This is what they try to do in Arab Spring also. This is what they have succeeded in doing in Bangladesh. And they tried that in India with the CAA agitation. They tried it with the Kisan agitation. And I bet on my bottom dollar, I'm saying, not bottom rupee, that they will try it again in India on some pretext or the other, probably on minority rights or something or the other. It will happen. This is the way to do a regime change. It's a classic case of how you change a regime and you don't even involve. And what really is happening in the process is that more than anything else, I would say, it is a change of that our minds are being manipulated today. I think that is the real issue which we have to understand what is going on. It is reality is altered right in front of our eyes, but along with the reality, our minds are being altered. We are being forced, or literally we are being morally forced to accept these changes, and we are led to believe that this is the right thing to do. And this is what is going on today. And therefore, I would say the Banglasize warning is not only a warning for Bangladesh, but for other countries in the south. but it is actually a warning for countries like India. And if I don't know how seriously the government takes this, I think they should take this extremely, extremely seriously. Steps should be taken to, as they say, nip the evil in the bud, whatever measures the government has to take. But that is for the government to decide. Our job as podcasters and as I'm an ex-media person, as people who keep, I think, a finger on the pulse of what's going on among the people. Our job is to bring these things to attention of the people. It's an insidious play which is in the works. It is something which is, at one level, it is quite disheartening to see that the real issues are brushed aside, because believe you me, just once again going back to Bangladesh, if anybody thinks that a Nobel laureate, Mr. Muhammad Yunus, is going to transform the fates and the lives of Bangladeshis, I'm afraid they are completely mistaken. It's going to get bad to worse from them. And just on that Nobel laureate thing, there is again a school of thought that all these people who win, especially these two awards, the Magsaysay Award and the Nobel Peace Prize, these are people who are plants of certain Western countries, of intelligence agencies. This is something which is not some state secret or something. Everybody knows about this thing. So we are witnessing that fantasy, that thought, that so-called conspiracy theory actually becoming a reality in real time in front of us. And I think the Indian state should wake up and take note of this very, very soon. They should take note of this. They should be very, very mindful of what's really going on and take steps to counteract it. So on this note, I come to the end of this particular podcast. I hope you like this podcast. As usual, I would say please subscribe to my show and just click on the red button. More enjoyable features are in the works and I will bring them for you. And on that note, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.